Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Kalen DeBoer, Alabama, pushing for the number one class in 2025 as they land another commitment. This one coming from four-star linebacker Dawson Merritt from the state of Kansas, a cat that we talked about a lot in relation to Alabama and one of my favorite linebackers in this 2025 cycle. And why I love Dawson Merritt so much is he's exactly what you're looking for in this modern era of college football, where you look at opposing offenses really testing linebackers from an athletic standpoint. You got to have linebackers that can operate in space, cover a lot of ground, and kind of do all of those things that offenses are really trying to test linebackers with. You look at Dawson Merritt, he's a guy that can go out to the flat and close distance and tackle running backs. He's a guy that can carry tight ends up the seam, a guy that can drop back and just cover a lot of ground in zone coverage, but a guy that operates really well in the tackle box as well. He checks, at least in my mind, all the boxes that you are looking for in this modern era college football linebacker. And I'll say this, Dawson Merritt, Daryl Johnson, I don't know if you'll find a more dynamic and athletic linebacker duo in this 2025 cycle. Another massive commitment for Alabama, fired up to get into the film. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys, to the Alabama fans. We've been breaking down so many Alabama commitments. We went ahead, got an Alabama commitment jersey. I can't thank you guys enough for rocking with it. Middle of June, the Alabama fans, you guys have shown so much love. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Sounds like we got a lot more commitments to talk about over the next couple of weeks. Without further ado, let's get into Dawson Merritt. Now, I think what intrigues you the most is just the raw athleticism that this guy has. From a physical trait standpoint, there's really not any boxes that Dawson Merritt doesn't check. You know you're going to get weight on that 6'3" frame. You take a look at what he did his junior year. Just does everything on the defensive side of the football. You'll see him line up as an edge rusher, extremely dynamic getting after the passer, really test tackles from an athletic standpoint. You'll see him play that overhang linebacker role, kind of almost that slot corner role. He's athletic enough to do that. And then you see him play that traditional off-ball linebacker where he's just going sideline to sideline, consistently finding the ball carrier. This kid combines the athletic traits with being kind of wired the right way. His dad is a defensive backs coach for the Kansas City Chiefs. You can tell on the film that this kid has just eaten and breathed football his whole entire life. He sees the game at an extremely high level, which is another really important concept to have as a linebacker. It's good to have all the physical traits, but if you can't diagnose quickly what's happening in front of you and go find the ball carrier, it don't really matter. Dawson Merritt has all those physical traits, but he also has that elite football IQ that you're looking for in your off-ball linebacker. Junior year, 83 tackles, 17 tackles for a loss, 7 sacks, multiple pass breakups. Again, he is just so versatile in terms of how you can use him in this Alabama defense. You get into the film, and again, it's one of the more fun film studies to watch for a linebacker. I love how he closes the distance between himself and the ball carriers. Like his ability to close that gap awfully quickly and then go just make plays. Really, really impressive. You see what he can do in zone coverage. Just closing throwing lanes, being physical at the point of attack. There's just not many things Dawson Merritt doesn't do well. And you look at a lot of linebackers have very limited experience and oftentimes have limited physical traits in terms of what they can do in the coverage aspect of being a linebacker. Dawson Merritt, that's probably where he excels the most. And again, you look at, so many of these offenses, especially in the SEC, and trying to spread you out, forcing your defensive players to operate in space. You need linebackers that can do what Dawson Merritt does. And I think this is a perfect fit in terms of what you're looking for. Elite edge rusher. This is a guy that knows how to rush the passer too. He's not just relying on physical traits, using his hands, getting disengaged, closing the gap between himself and the quarterback. Legitimate juice as an edge rusher. And I kind of see him being like, all right, we're going to play primarily off-ball linebacker on those third and long situations, send him in the A-gap, send him off the edge. He's a guy that can impact the game in so many different ways. Again, kind of playing that overhang linebacker spot, and you just see him close distance so well, always finding the football, making those game-changing plays. He's so comfortable in space. And how about the physicality? That's probably the biggest question mark you have, right? At 6'3", 215, can you deal with getting off blocks, stacking and shedding at that linebacker position in the SEC. You fire up this film right here. This is ideal. I mean, this is textbook, right? Benching out this tight end, keeping your outside shoulder free, closing the gap, making the play for the safety. There just not much Dawson Merritt doesn't bring to this Alabama defense, fighting through a double team here, getting through just a dog on the bone with the quarterback. He's a guy that you can have spy a quarterback, and he is going to make that play more times than not. Really playing the run well. Again, you talk about instincts. I mean, reading that read option, seeing the quarterback gives, and then I'm closing distance. And he's athletic enough to kind of do that, right? If that quarterback wants to keep it, he's not beating Dawson Merritt to the boundary. So many different ways you can get this kid incorporated in your defense. And you take a look at the 2025 class, a couple things that really stand out to me. You look at the linebacker room, Darryl Johnson and Dawson Merritt, elite linebacker group. And then you start scrolling down and say, let's look at the front seven. You add a guy like Antonio Coleman. Again, we have this conversation a lot. We knew Kalen DeBoer would be able to recruit quarterbacks and wide receivers. What we had question marks about, what's he going to do in the front seven? What's he going to do on the offensive line? They have one of the stronger offensive line classes with Jackson Lloyd, Micah DeBose, and Michael Carroll. But then you look at what they're doing in the front seven and say, hey, really like what they're building there as well. This looks like it's going to be just as talented of a program with Kalen DeBoer running this show as it was with Nick Saban. And I think that's a massive storyline for Alabama. We know Kalen DeBoer is a good coach. We've talked about it. Can he recruit the same way Nick Saban does? We talk about this seemingly every other day at this point. He is continuing to prove a lot of the doubters wrong in terms of what he can do recruiting in the SEC. Another massive get for Alabama. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.